The first of the sort of PEEPS sessions is what makes a credible candidate. Now, Henry again has gone over the actual sort of basic qualifications that you need, and it's worth just reiterating those or having a look at those again, because obviously you do have to meet the basic eligibility criteria for a doctoral or postdoctoral fellowship. And for a doctoral fellowship, that's a first or 2-1, and if you don't have a BA or BSc, they would expect a master's. And obviously there are ways and routes into doing masters that don't necessarily require a first or 2-1 bachelor's. Some prior research experience or training. So obviously, you're not going to be expected to have done loads at doctoral level, but some indication of interest or involvement. If you have done prior research, that's great, or training. That's something that they'd be looking for. Obviously, at this stage, you're not expected to have a PhD, and as Henry has said, if you are already enrolled on a PhD, it shouldn't be by more than 12 months full time by the award start date. For postdoctoral fellowship, you need a relevant PhD or an MD or a submitted PhD, which has to be awarded by interview. If you have a professional doctorate, do talk to the academy. They like to talk to candidates about what exactly they've done to check that, how relevant that is towards contributing towards the possibility of doing a postdoctoral fellowship. It's a bit different to an MD. So talk to the academy if you have a professional doctorate and are thinking of applying for a postdoctoral fellowship. They want people who don't yet hold a chair. And if you are clinical, that you've completed your pre-registration clinical training. So thinking of broadly the assessment criteria, they're looking for previous research training or research experience, outputs and impact related to your stage and also where you're from. So if you are a medic who's gone through the clinical academic program, you're going to have several publications and you would have been involved in research projects. If you are a nurse or a midwife, that's far less likely because there isn't really the opportunity built into your training to do these things. So these things will be taken into account. So that's important to remember. They're looking at your potential to become a research leader. So obviously they're not funding these PhDs for fun. They are for people who are going to go on and lead research and improve patient care in the future. They're looking to judge your suitability and commitment to this academic or practitioner academic career. At the postdoctoral level, again, looking at relevant research experience and training. They're looking at this stage at high quality, impactful research that you've already done. So that might be publications and outputs from your PhD and other research experience. They're looking at your trajectory to leadership. They're looking at your commitment, again, to a career in the area. And at this stage, they're beginning to look at the potential for or evidence of the beginnings of independence. For example, you're forming your own collaborations and perhaps some involvement in building the research capacity of others. So that's the sort of general things that are being looked for. So where is the person assessed in the application form? Well, obviously, there'll be general impressions from the whole application. And so a well-presented, clear proposal is a very good way of impressing people. But in particular, there are some areas. There's the new narrative CV, which NIHR has brought in, and also the host organisation support statement. And we'll be saying a little bit more about that later. The narrative CV is new, and I think it is something that people can find a bit intimidating. So it's worth just saying a little bit about what that is. So basically, it's a CV format that provides a structured written description of a person's contributions and achievements that reflects a broad range of relevant skills and experience, more than can be often seen in a traditional academic CV. And this is really part of a big shift in trying to widen how we judge people for things like fellowships and academic jobs generally. So according to the UKRI, in enabling a broader approach of people, in enabling a broader range of people to evidence a wider variety of skills and experience, it helps to see the whole person, helping identify the best people and ideas so they can be supported to flourish. So it's a much broader thing than just a plain academic CV. Generally speaking, what they're looking for is quality, not necessarily quantity. I mean, I think if you have published a lot of papers, it's worth saying, how many you've published, but they don't want you getting too bogged down in metrics. It allows you to cover the full range of research activities. So that includes what you're doing for other people, so your peers, other research groups, or wider society. It enables you to show how you've overcome barriers and made the most of opportunities, and it allows you to talk about relevant non-research related work or life experience. So, any kind of management or teamwork is very relevant to an academic career. And it aims to reward a broader set of research-related activities, valuing diverse contributions and career paths, basically improving diversity and inclusion, and encouraging the responsible use of metrics. And this is just taken from the University of Oxford website, which has a very good guide to narrative CVs, so worth taking a look. So sort of general guidance on the narrative CV, we'll always look at the funder's guidance, because although there's a general sort of headings that are used, sometimes different funders, tweak them or do slightly different things with them. So in the NIHR's case, there's a very clear page about what they're looking for. Interestingly, for the NIHR, I don't know if any of you had previous experience of fellowship applications, but there used to be a section called the applicant research background. And, in looking at all the stuff around narrative CVs, it's quite obvious that, in fact, the narrative CV is very much like the old applicant research background, but it gives you a template. So it's like teasing out the important things that people want to hear from you. In the NIHR's case, it does replace the normal CV. So in that sense, it is important to include some of those items that, for example, relate to eligibility and assessment criteria within the narrative, because there's no quick search button. They can't see, oh, you've got a 2-1, oh, you've got a first. It has to be stated somewhere. So make sure that that is built into the narrative CV. For the NIHR, keep to the 3 pages as requested. It's an opportunity to tell your story. So it's not just really a load of bullet points. We want to have a bit of narrative. We want to know things that you were particularly proud of, the projects that really engaged you and why they engaged you. You need to include the skills that you acquired in undertaking the work that you did. And again, there's no obvious heading for that. So again, you have to build it into the narrative. So if you're talking about a project, you can talk about the skills that you acquired when you were involved with that project. Importantly, think about your impact. There's been a big shift in the last few years from just doing research to actually seeing what happens to that research once it's out there in the real world. And the NIHR is very concerned to see that you've thought about impact. So if you already have a track record of, for example, audit work that's changed practice, or local evaluations that have had an impact, or guidelines that you've written, even if they're local guidelines, these all have impact. And it's that people want to see in a fellowship application. They want to see that the person has had impact already, if you have. So it's qualitative details, not just metrics. So if we look at the different sections that are there, these are the actual headings that you will see. So contributions to the generation of new ideas, tools, methodologies, or knowledge, contributions to the development of others and maintenance of effective working relationships, contributions to the wider society, wider research community, and contributions to broader society, and then your suitability for the award. Now, I think some of those headings can be quite intimidating for an early career researcher. A pre-doc fellowship or a doctoral fellowship, you're thinking, oh gosh, how have I contributed to broader society? Have I really contributed to the wider research community at this stage? But again, remember that you're being judged on your stage. So they're not expecting to see something, outrageously amazing if you simply haven't had the opportunity to date to do that. And I'll give you some tips in a minute about the sorts of things you can think of that can go into those sections. So if we think about the first section, what we're talking about here are basically your research outputs, the development of methods, tools, or resources. So it might not just be the results of a research project, it might be some methodology or resources that you've developed. even the generation of new ideas or hypotheses that are changing the direction and way in which people think. You can include things like award or peer recognition, such as invited talks, because that is an evidence of quality and esteem from your colleagues. And obviously, you can talk about the funding you've won, so the sort of funder role dates and what the funding enabled. So these are the sorts of things that Oxford University came up with on their guidance: research publications, policy publications, guidelines, products. So that might be commercial or entrepreneurial or educational products. Patents, I think one of you said already, data sets you covered, designs generally, conference publications that you covered, software code, evidence synthesis, exhibitions or audio visual media, protocols, audit evaluation or quality improvement programs. So what about this next section, contributions to the development of others and maintenance of effective working relationships? But yes, so this might include obviously supervision or mentoring in whatever context. In fact, project management, line management, again, that can be what you've done clinically or in practice, not just in a research context. Contributions to success in a team or for team members or team working. So there's a lot about, how you've worked with other people successfully. Formal teaching or the development of others, strategic leadership, establishing or driving collaborations and networks, providing development opportunities such as training events and indeed including things like rewards and recruitment strategies. So lots of different things that can be included there, very much thinking about how you as a person in your everyday practice and also in any research context that you've worked in to date, how you have developed and sort of helped others and how you've managed to work effectively. Okay, so these are the sorts of things that we have on our slide. So editing and reviewing. So for example, journals or funding applications, contributions to improved research integrity or culture. And that is another really big thing that over the last few years is coming into the research environment. And they want to see people who are contributing to those sorts of things. Work with professional bodies, positions of responsibility, leadership of activities across disciplines, institutions, or even countries, committee membership, contributions to open research, active sharing of knowledge and skills, community resources, strategic leadership, influencing a research or innovation agenda, organising workshops and conferences. So a wide range of things there. And again, I suspect in the chat, there's a lot of valuable information there too. The next one is contributions to broader society. So this is thinking sort of beyond academia.
So actions to ensure research reaches and influences relevant audiences, commercialization, policy engagement and development, partnerships with industry, public sector, general knowledge exchange between researchers and users of research. So yes, sort of science fairs, I think were mentioned in the chat. Blogs and social media outputs, other impacts across policy, practice, and business, patient and public engagement and understanding of research. But again, in the chat, I think you've got heaps of other suggestions as well, which is excellent. And finally, the section on your suitability for the award. Now, the NIHR has some very particular things they ask for here, so it's obviously important to flag those up. So they are interested, I think, it has very much a feel about where you're headed, but to detail the research career you would like to develop or are developing and how your experience supports this. The fellowship should create a step change in your career trajectory, and I know Henry mentioned that too. You need to describe the potential impact of the award, how it will support your aspirations, so the trajectory for yourself and future goals, but also the trajectory for your work. So those are the things that the NIHR mention. I think it's probably also worth thinking about anything else that doesn't fit into those other categories, because it's quite a broad heading, your suitability for the award. So if you haven't yet found a place to put perhaps some of those eligibility criteria or the assessment criteria, make sure that they are all covered. I mean, I think that for this sort of activity, it's almost worth getting a blank sheet of paper and putting down absolutely everything that you've done that you think might be relevant overall, and then perhaps having the headings of the narrative CV and just plonking each one under each of the headings to see where you think it might best fit. But when you have a kind of brainstorm like that, you'll probably come up with all sorts of things you wouldn't necessarily think of if you were sort of constraining yourself to particular headings at one point in time. So it might be worth having a big brainstorm and then allocating each of the things you've come up with to where you think it best fits on the narrative CV. Generally speaking, be confident, but don't be overconfident. So again, it's all to do with flagging up where you are for your stage. And I do love this cartoon because it just shows that if you go overboard, people aren't interested. But if you get it about right and you're selling the best pizza pies in the block, you're going to get a lot of attention and people will understand and think, oh yeah, this is a good person. If you're planning to apply in the future, be proactive. So as you can see from the exercises that we've just been doing, all your sort of outputs are important. So if you've got that paper that you haven't got around to writing, or you get the opportunity to sit on a committee or organize a research meeting or a conference, do it, because all these things will look really good on your narrative CV. And finally, don't panic. I've said already that you'll be judged according to your background, stage, and experience. So you're not being compared to some mythical super researcher. If you're a nurse or a midwife, you will be judged according to your opportunities, stage, and experience, and that they're not going to compare you directly with a medic who's been an ACF already. Don't panic. You will be judged against your background, stage, and experience, not some super researcher.